In an unexpected twist, legendary actor Gene Hackman, now 81, has made headlines not for his iconic roles or Hollywood fame, but for surviving a harrowing accident in the Florida Keys. The actor, known for his tough guy persona, was riding his bike when the unthinkable happened. An emergency call came in from a homeless man claiming he'd been beaten up by none other than Hackman himself. Yes, you read that right. An 81-year-old retired superstar was involved in a bizarre altercation. But don't be fooled. If you think Hackman's life now consists of lounging on a beach or hitting golf balls in his retirement, you're gravely mistaken. In fact, Hackman's life is far from slowing down. Sure, he's not the young man who made waves on the big screen, but he's still the kind of guy who's out there brawling with strangers, surviving near-death truck accidents, and cycling as if he's training for the Tour de France. Hackman, a man who turned his back on Hollywood decades ago, isn't quite the laid-back senior you might imagine. There's a deeper, more complicated story beneath the surface, one full of secret sorrows and a resilience that still takes everyone by surprise. This is the Gene Hackman you never knew you needed to learn about. Born in 1930 in San Bernardino, California, Hackman's early years weren't easy. His father, a newspaper printer, moved the family constantly for work, and his parents' tumultuous marriage made for a volatile home life. Hackman was subjected to frequent beatings by his father, and when he was just 13, everything changed. His father abandoned the family without so much as a goodbye, leaving Hackman and his mother to fend for themselves. This abandonment, particularly from a man who was supposed to be a protector, haunted Hackman for years. He once admitted that to tap into the emotional range needed for some of his more dramatic film roles, he would draw on the memory of that fateful day his father left. After the departure of his father, Hackman and his mother moved to Danville, Illinois, where they lived with his grandmother. As a teenager, Hackman was no model student. He found school tedious and would often rebel against authority. His dislike for structure, however, led him into trouble. At one point, he was even jailed for stealing food, a reflection of a kid in desperate need of direction. His mother tried to guide him, but Hackman's wild nature remained unrestrained. The only place Hackman ever truly found solace was in the world of movies. His mother would watch him light up when he saw films, always expressing her hope that one day he'd become a famous actor. Sadly, she passed away before her dream for her son came true. At just 16, Hackman's frustrations boiled over when he got into a fight with a coach and dropped out of school. He bounced around from job to job, never staying long enough to find stability. But then, in a surprising move, Hackman made a decision that would forever change the course of his life. He joined the U.S. Marine Corps. Looking for both financial security and a way out of his chaotic home life, Hackman lied about his age and enlisted right after the end of World War II. While the military wasn't just about fighting anymore, it offered Hackman something he desperately needed: structure, discipline, and a chance at a new beginning. Boot camp in San Diego must have been a shocking experience for a rebellious teen like Hackman, where orders and obedience were paramount. But the Marines would end up shaping him into the man who would one day command the big screen with a tough, no-nonsense attitude. And though the world may know him for his unforgettable performances, the journey that took him there is a story of hardship, survival, and a tenacious spirit that simply couldn't be broken. After his stint in the Marines, Hackman's wild, rebellious nature didn't exactly mellow out. In fact, his time in the military only intensified his fight against authority, something that had been a constant in his life. The rebel without a cause vibe he carried from his teenage years didn't fade, and it caused more problems. He clashed with authority figures, fought with fellow Marines, and his impulsive nature often led to trouble. But Hackman wasn't just a troublemaker. After boot camp, he spent some time at Camp Pendleton, California, where he learned the ropes of being a field radio operator. His duties took him all over the world, even to China, during the upheaval of the Communist Revolution under Mao Zedong. Imagine the things he must have witnessed, moments that shaped the hardened persona he would later portray on screen. But as with much of Hackman's life, the timing was never quite right. When the Korean War broke out in 1950, it was his turn to serve. But Gene's wild side kicked in once again. He crashed his motorcycle into a tractor, breaking several bones. It was terrible timing, but in a twisted way, it might have been the best thing that could have happened. Instead of shipping out to Korea, he was sidelined from active combat. Instead of braving the war zones, Hackman ended up in the less glamorous role of a disc jockey at a military radio station. Though being a DJ might not seem thrilling, it had a profound impact on his future. Hackman honed his voice and delivery during those years, crucial skills that would serve him well once he finally made it to Hollywood. In 1952, Hackman was honorably discharged from the Marines, and he walked away from the military with more than just a clean record. The Marines had given him a sense of stability, something he'd never really had growing up. And though he would never fully embrace the structure they demanded, it offered him experiences that would shape his career, as well as a much-needed sense of direction. Now a free man, Hackman headed to New York City, hoping to reinvent himself once again. This time he had a plan. He used the GI Bill to study journalism at the University of Illinois, thinking it would open new doors. However, after 6 months, Hackman realized the academic route wasn't for him. So he dusted off his original dream and jumped headfirst into acting. But New York wasn't rolling out the red carpet. Hackman struggled hard. He couldn't even land steady work. He did whatever he could to survive, selling door to door, moving furniture, and scraping by in any way possible. At 26, he found himself at a crossroads, feeling like he had failed at everything he had ever tried. But Hackman didn't give up. He never did. In 1956, with nothing to lose, he packed his bags and moved to California, hoping the West Coast would offer him the break he so desperately needed. His first stop? The legendary Pasadena Playhouse, known for producing serious actors. But even in California, life wasn't easy. Hackman clashed with the system and, true to form, got into more fights, this time with fellow students. But in a strange twist of fate, one of those fellow students would become a lifelong friend. That student was Dustin Hoffman, only 19 at the time. Together, the two rebels formed a bond that would withstand the test of time. It's hard to imagine, but back then, the Pasadena Playhouse class voted them least likely to succeed. But Hackman and Hoffman didn't let that label stick. They stuck together, determined to prove the world wrong. Eventually, the two were joined by another aspiring actor, Robert Duvall, and the trio shared an apartment for years. They became an inseparable unit, living the kind of bohemian life that could easily have been turned into a sitcom. But California wasn't all sunshine and roses. Despite their best efforts, Hackman's rebellious nature got him kicked out of the Pasadena Playhouse after just a year. But instead of throwing in the towel, Hackman kept pushing forward. He kept taking whatever acting gigs he could get, mostly small, off-Broadway plays, but he was relentless. Then, in 1961, Hackman's big break came with a role in the film Mad Dog Call. Though still a minor part, it was the first real taste of what was to come. More roles followed, including a TV appearance in Tallahassee 7000. By the time he turned 31, Hackman finally felt like things were starting to click. His hard work was finally beginning to pay off. But just as things were beginning to look up, tragedy struck. In 1962, Gene's mother, who had always supported his acting dreams, died unexpectedly after falling asleep with a cigarette in her hand. She had been drinking heavily, and her sudden death was a devastating blow that Hackman never fully recovered from. But it didn't break him. If anything, it fueled his desire to succeed and honor the dreams she had for him. The road to stardom was long, rocky, and filled with obstacles, but Hackman's journey, marked by personal loss, struggle, and a refusal to accept failure, was only just beginning. Tragically, the cigarette that claimed his mother's life ended up setting her house on fire. She didn't make it out. With his father long gone, John had nothing left from his family. His mother was the last connection he had, and now she was gone too. It left him heartbroken. In the years that followed, Hackman would admit how devastated he was that his mother never got to see him act, let alone achieve the fame he had worked so tirelessly for. The grief was overwhelming, but Hackman, as he always had, refused to give in. He kept pushing forward, determined to honor her memory by chasing the dream they'd shared. In 1964, things began to shift when Gene landed a role alongside Warren Beatty in Lilith. That connection would prove invaluable. Beatty, recognizing Hackman's talent, recommended him for the role of Buck Barrow in the 1967 film Bonnie and Clyde. That film would change Hackman's life forever. His portrayal of the ruthless outlaw earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Suddenly, Hollywood took notice, and Gene Hackman was a name everyone knew. But Hackman wasn't about to coast on his newfound fame. The 1970s were a whirlwind for him, filled with some of the most iconic roles of his career. In 1971, he portrayed the tough, no-nonsense Popeye Doyle in The French Connection. Hackman's commitment to that role was so intense that it led to constant tension on set with director William Friedkin. The two would often clash, but there was no denying the results. Hackman's performance was so powerful, so unforgettable, that it earned him an Academy Award for Best Actor. As the decade rolled on, Hackman's star continued to rise. In 1973, he teamed up with another rising star, Al Pacino, for Scarecrow. Once again, behind the scenes, tensions flared. Hackman's meticulous, planned approach clashed with Pacino's more improvisational, emotional style. Some on set even thought Hackman could be a bit too intense and argumentative. But despite the behind-the-scenes drama, Hackman's talent was undeniable. Whether he was playing an action hero, a dramatic lead, or an iconic villain, Hackman brought an unmatched authenticity to every role. His turn as Lex Luthor in Superman, 1978, proved that Hackman could dominate the blockbuster scene, playing both the villainous mastermind and serious dramatic roles with equal flair. Meanwhile, in The Conversation, 1974, a taut political thriller directed by Francis Ford Coppola, Hackman gave a performance that garnered critical acclaim and further award nominations, cementing his place as one of the most versatile actors of his generation. But despite his professional triumphs, life off camera was far more difficult. In 1982, he lost his best friend Norman Gary, and that loss hit him hard. At the same time, his marriage to his wife, Faye Maltz, began to unravel. The couple, who had 3 children together, struggled to maintain their family life as Gene's career took him on constant filming journeys. By 1986, the pressures of his career led to a divorce. Hackman later admitted in a New York Times interview that he was at fault. He had spent so many years striving for recognition that once the success came, it was hard to step back and prioritize his personal life. In a GQ interview, he openly confessed that his constant traveling for work had strained his relationship with his kids, and it left him with regrets. By the late 80s, Hackman found himself facing some serious financial issues. Tax problems and a few bad investments left him struggling to maintain the high-rolling lifestyle he had grown accustomed to. He even had to borrow his daughter's car to get around. In order to make ends meet, Hackman took on a staggering number of roles. From 1985 to 1988, he appeared in an eye-popping 9 films. But amidst the chaos, there was a turning point, Mississippi Burning, 1988, in which Hackman played an FBI agent investigating a racially charged murder case in the Deep South, brought his career roaring back to life. Critics praised his performance, and he earned his 2nd Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. Even on this serious project, Hackman's infamous strong-willed personality didn't make things easy on set. His passion for authenticity clashed with director Alan Parker's vision, and Hackman wasn't afraid to voice his opinions. He wasn't one to back down when it came to how a scene should be executed. The tension on set was palpable, but once again, Hackman delivered a performance that was impossible to ignore. In 1992, Hackman teamed up with Clint Eastwood for Unforgiven, playing the chilling villain Little Bill Daggett. This role would not only earn him yet another Academy Award, but would cement his status as one of Hollywood's all-time greats. Despite the turbulent relationships, his uncompromising vision, and a career filled with both professional and personal highs and lows, Gene Hackman remained one of the most revered and versatile actors in the history of American cinema. Through it all, grief, love, loss, and redemption, Hackman never stopped working, always pushing forward, always determined to find the next great challenge. Hackman's career continued to evolve throughout the 2000s, proving that even after decades in Hollywood, he still had the chops to tackle a wide range of roles. In 2001, he took on the role of the eccentric Royal Tenenbaum in Wes Anderson's The Royal Tenenbaums. His portrayal of the troubled patriarch was a critical success, showcasing his ability to dive into more quirky, character-driven roles. But, as with many of his past projects, the behind-the-scenes dynamics were far from smooth. On set, Hackman reportedly clashed with director Wes Anderson over the direction of the film. Tensions ran high, and according to reports, Hackman's co-star, Bill Murray, had to step in to mediate between the two, acting as a buffer during some of the more heated exchanges. Despite the drama, Hackman's performance remained a standout, adding yet another unforgettable character to his already impressive portfolio. However, after this role, Hackman's career began to wind down. His final film appearance came in 2004 with Welcome to Mooseport, a comedy alongside Ray Romano. Despite the star power involved, the film was a box office disappointment, with a budget of $30 million and only $14 million in revenue. The failure of the film marked the end of an era, and soon after, Hackman announced his retirement from acting. Since then, he has stayed out of the limelight, leaving behind a legacy that has only grown with time. Even after his retirement, Hackman's reputation as the tough guy continued to build. It became clear that his on-screen persona wasn't just for show. Gene Hackman was every bit the tough guy in real life as well. One of the most memorable incidents came in 2001, when at the age of 71, Hackman was involved in a minor fender bender in West Hollywood. The situation quickly escalated when the young men in the other car began yelling at him. Most people his age would have walked away, but not Hackman. Witnesses reported that he stood his ground, eventually getting into a confrontation with the men. Hackman, even at 71, was no pushover. The altercation continued until the cops arrived, and while no charges were pressed, the whole situation made headlines. It was just another example of Hackman's enduring toughness. That wasn't an isolated incident. In 2012, at the age of 82, Hackman was walking with his wife, Betsy, in Santa Fe when they were harassed by a homeless man. The man insulted Betsy, and Hackman, never one to back down, immediately took action. Once again, the police were called, but this time it was clear. Hackman was simply defending himself and his wife. It was a remarkable display of courage and resilience, especially considering his age. But it wasn't just his physical confrontations that showed Hackman's resilience. It was also his ability to fight through health challenges that would have sidelined most people. In 1990, Gene faced a serious health scare when symptoms pointed to prostate cancer. Fortunately, it turned out to be a false alarm. But that same year, doctors discovered dangerous blockages in his arteries, which required an angioplasty, a procedure where a tiny balloon is inflated to clear the blockage. At that moment, doctors warned his wife that he might not have had much time left had they not caught it. It was a close call, but Hackman pulled through. Unfortunately, Heart issues weren't the only health problems he would face. In the early 2000s, Hackman's heart problems flared up again, and it was clear that the stress of his career and the grueling filming schedules had taken their toll. The strain on his health was one of the major reasons he decided to retire. At that point, Hackman knew it was time to step back from the hectic pace of Hollywood and focus on his well-being. But even as his health declined, Hackman never lost his drive to stay active. In 2004, he was involved in a serious bicycle accident in Florida, suffering head injuries and various other injuries. But Hackman wasn't the type to let something like that stop him. He remained determined to stay physically active and continued cycling into his 80s, showing the world that age and injuries weren't going to slow him down. In 2012, Hackman had another close call when he was cycling without a helmet and was hit by a truck. Miraculously, he wasn't seriously injured, and once again, he bounced back quickly. It seemed that nothing could keep him from staying active and enjoying life. Hackman's love for the outdoors and physical activity became even more apparent when he moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, in the late 2000s. The area, known for its stunning desert landscapes and vast network of trails, became his playground. At the age of 88, Hackman wasn't slowing down. In fact, he bought an e-bike to help him keep exploring the area. The trails of New Mexico became his sanctuary, and he continued to enjoy the beauty of the outdoors, taking full advantage of the trails and the weather. Hackman's retirement may have kept him out of the public eye, but his legacy is still very much alive. His real-life toughness, his dedication to his craft, and his ability to keep pushing forward even when life threw him curveballs only add to the legend of Gene Hackman. He may no longer be in front of the camera, but his story remains a testament to resilience, strength, and the indomitable spirit of one of Hollywood's all-time greats. Gene Hackman's on-screen persona, tough, fearless, and ever determined, was far from just an act. In fact, it mirrored the way he lived his life off the screen. As he grew older, he made it a point to stay in shape, understanding that physical health would make all the difference, especially with the heart problems he'd faced over the years. Hackman never let up on his physicality, even after leaving Hollywood. If you recall him tearing through action-packed scenes in The French Connection or Unforgiven, you might not be surprised to learn that Hackman's off-screen life was just as fast-paced and adrenaline-fueled. For years, Hackman was a serious motorsports enthusiast, competing in races with the Sports Car Club of America. It wasn't just a hobby for him, it was a passion. He trained hard, worked tirelessly to keep up with the competition, and treated racing with the same commitment and intensity he had always brought to his acting. That competitive fire and risk-taking were always a part of his nature. In 1986, while racing in an endurance event, Hackman crashed his car, rolling it in a dramatic accident. But true to form, he walked away from the wreck without serious injury. It was another example of his indomitable spirit, a man who wasn't afraid to take risks, whether on the racetrack or in his career. Even though racing eventually slowed down as he got older, Hackman's love for the sport never dimmed. He continued to follow races, staying informed on the latest news, and remained connected to the racing community. While he may no longer be behind the wheel, his passion for the sport continues to run deep. But it wasn't just the thrill of racing that drove Hackman. It was the same hunger for challenges that motivated his decision to retire from Hollywood. His health problems, particularly his ongoing heart issues, were catching up with him, and in 2004, Hackman decided it was time for a change. He wanted to live life at a different pace, away from the Hollywood spotlight, without the constant pressure and chaos of the industry. And just like his career had been, low-key and unassuming, his exit was quiet. No grand retirement announcement, no farewell tours, just a graceful step away from it all. Since leaving the limelight, Hackman has found new ways to channel his creativity. He's always been a writer at heart and has co-authored several novels, delving into historical fiction and political thrillers. His writing, much like his acting, showcases his intense focus and commitment to his craft. As he told Reuters, "I like the loneliness of writing. It's similar in some ways to acting, but it's more private." The solitude of writing gave him the space to explore new stories, without the constant public attention he had grown used to during his acting career. Santa Fe, New Mexico, became the perfect setting for Hackman's new life. The peaceful, sun-baked landscapes offered the privacy and quiet he craved. It wasn't just the beauty of the place that drew him in, it was the sense of calm, far removed from the frenetic pace of Hollywood. Hackman found himself immersed in a quieter, more reflective way of life, and he took full advantage. Along with his writing, he rekindled his love for the outdoors, regularly hitting the scenic trails on his bike. His physical activity remained a constant, as if the spirit of adventure was always in him, even when the spotlight was no longer on him. In addition to biking, Hackman also discovered a new creative outlet, painting. His artistic inclinations were never limited to just acting, and now he had the time and space to explore other mediums of expression. It was as if his entire life had come full circle, finding peace not only in the solitude of writing and painting, but in the quiet joys of family life as well. Having admitted his regrets over losing touch with his children during his years of stardom, Hackman has made an effort to reconnect with his family, cherishing the moments he had once missed. Though he left Hollywood for good, Hackman did return briefly to narrate some documentaries, particularly those about the Marine Corps, where he had served in his youth. It was his way of coming full circle with his past, but once the project was finished, Hollywood no longer held the same allure. The peace he found in Santa Fe was simply too powerful to resist. Hackman's life with his wife, Betsy Arakawa, has been a key part of this new chapter. Married in 1991, Betsy has been by his side ever since, and their relationship seems to be the perfect balance of mutual respect and shared passions. A classically trained pianist and former business owner, Betsy shares Hackman's love for the arts and, importantly, their desire for privacy. Together, they've created a life away from the pressures of fame, one that allows them both to enjoy the simple pleasures of life. Gene Hackman's story is one of transformation. The tough, hard-nosed characters he portrayed on screen couldn't be further from the private, introspective man he became in retirement. But perhaps that's what makes Hackman's legacy even more remarkable. He was never just the tough guy we saw on screen. Off the camera, he's a man who lived fully, loved deeply, and took life's challenges head-on, whether in the world of acting, racing, or just getting older. Gene Hackman may have left Hollywood, but the story of his incredible journey continues to inspire those who remember the legend he built both on and off the screen. Gene Hackman, known for his tough on-screen characters like Detective Popeye Doyle and Captain Ramsey, is a complex figure in real life. Beneath his hardened roles lies a gentle, soft-spoken man with a resilient spirit. Hackman's willingness to stand his ground is evident in both his acting career and personal life, often challenging directors and defending himself even later in life. Resisting the trappings of fame, he focused on his craft rather than celebrity culture. A lifelong history enthusiast, he also co-authored deeply researched historical novels, reflecting his respect for storytelling and the complexities of human nature. To truly understand Gene Hackman, one must consider his childhood marked by constant moves, instability, and the painful absence of his father, who left when Hackman was 13. This departure left lasting scars, which he later channeled into poignant performances. Additionally, the tragic death of his mother, who dreamed of his success, further deepened his emotional landscape. As Hackman aged, his vulnerability became more apparent, revealing regrets about lost time with his children amid his career pursuits. His greatness lies in his multifaceted nature, strong yet sensitive, tough yet humorous, showing that his humanity enriches his legacy.